right, pay attention. Our guest speaker couldn't make it today, so we're going to slog through 90 minutes of broken English contestants. I'm kidding. No cow tips. You haven't earned them yet. Okay, but you might have earned a broken English contestant. Let's see here. Brace yourself. My salmon, Ryan Sloan it is. Actually, it could be any Ryan for that matter, but it's Ryan Sloan in this case. My salmon, Ryan, is always there for me, never tries to upsail me, and points me in the right direction, which would be what? Upstream. Okay. It is refreshing. It is refreshing to have it's probably freshwater refreshing, to have a salmon who cares about helping you get what you need and want what's best for you. What a great person. Well done, salmon. All right, today we have a unique meeting featuring a special guest speaker. Michael Angelo Caruso is a value communication consultant to companies and organizations all over the world. He's delivered thousands of presentations and keynotes and speeches on subjects of leadership, selling, customer service, and presentation skills. He's a founder of the Edison House and president of the Edison House, an international consulting firm specializing in corporate and personal development. Edison House has clients including Bank of America, Citgo, Rayovac, Hallmark, Verizon Wireless, the United States Navy, Nissan, and actually Sweetwater. He has been here about 4 or 5 different times. Michael educates, entertains, drawing on previous career in the telecommunications industry, and actually has a decade as a professional musician. So he gets us, okay? Michael will be focusing on building your brand within the Sweetwater brand. He will take the whole meeting, and so there will be no announcements at the end. And so when he's finished up, we will all be dismissed. Michael, it's great to have you back. Come on up.
Thank you, George. Nice job. Pleasure, everybody. Good morning. This is the largest podium I have seen in my entire life. I have done 2,000 paid presentations on 5 continents in 49 states, and this is the biggest podium I've ever seen. It's like a podium on steroids, corn-fed, this podium. It's good to be back, Sweetwater. I understand we have 2 groups today. This is the smart group. The senior group, somebody said, the tenured group. We'll be getting out early. You're welcome. Troy's right. We're going to talk today about the building a brand, and it's interesting because most of you probably don't think of yourself as building a brand. If you looked at your job description, the title on your business card, nothing about it says brand builder, and yet all of you are helping build the Sweetwater brand, and I'm going to turn you on today to another idea about building your own brand within Sweetwater. So a brand within a brand. It's pretty cool. I want to thank John Hopkins, who my initial contact at the company is fantastic. We've been friends for, I think, nearly a decade now. Chuck, of course, and Jeff Radke, who's been great to me through the years. And is Jeff here today? I haven't seen him yet. No, he's out. He left? He's out. Oh, he's out. Okay, very good. And it's a pleasure to be back. So we're going to turn you on to some cool stuff. It's been a while since I've been here, and I have a little update for you on some things. First of all, I'm feeling great. Thank you very much for asking. My health is good. And I've had a long career. Like, it's almost been 23 years now in the speaking business. Before that, another 10 in the music business. So I've been in front of people for a long, long time. I've lived the lifestyle, and I'm proud to say I'm a survivor. We lost some great people in 2018 again. And we know that when you travel and you serve others and you're in a rough business or a racy business, that it can be hard on the system. And so I'm proud to tell you I'm still around and still feeling pretty good. Other changes since last time we talked. I don't know if it's a health change or not, but I got braces on my teeth. And I share that with you not because you're actually going to notice. I have the Invisalign, and actually the trays are out right now. First of all, does anybody have braces right now? Anybody in the room? Has anybody had braces in your life? Yeah, lots of people. All on this side of the room. Interesting. And the thing with the Invisalign is you can't see them as well. And so it's a different kind of correction, but it happens over time. Like your teeth actually move. I share this with you because I find that this incremental change is quite amazing. Your teeth actually move less than the width of a hair in a week. Less than the width of a human hair. And what happens over time is, you know, anybody who's had braces, you reclaim your smile. All of those little tiny adjustments, you know, the teeth this way, this way. There's a thing on my this side right now. It's a little notch that pulls the tooth out of the root a little bit to even out my smile, because one of the tooths is shorter than the teeth around it. And it's adjusting that. And the reason we're doing incremental change is because change can be very painful. Big change can be hugely painful. And in your mouth, of course, you have to go with incremental change because it hurts. That's the whole problem with braces, is how fast nobody wants to be in braces for a year, but the reason we do it for a year is because it's painful. Change in and of itself is painful. And so as we talk about change today, and we are talking about change because the whole idea of you coming to work every day is not to stay the same. It's to be better. And so I have some ideas for you that will make you better. Some of the ideas you'll like right out of the box. You're going to go try them. You're going to report success almost immediately. Some of the ideas you may never warm to, but I don't know which one they're going to be, so I'm going to give you all of the ideas to you today. It's been a big year for, oh, by the way, we stayed at the Don Hall Hotel last night. Has anybody been? Pretty cool. It's an interesting place, man. I like the memorabilia and stuff inside. We stayed in the, there was discussion about what room we stayed in because we saw art from the Beatles. Who else, Renee? Miles Davis was in our room last night. That was creepy. In the bathroom, there's art that says, "Raindrops keep falling on my head." Cute, right? And get it? Raindrops, shower. You with me, right? And it was beautifully done. I don't know if it's called Art Deco, this kind of decoration, but it was all 60s, like the lamps and stuff. Even the wiring, I thought, wow. I used to get shocked a lot in the 60s with lights and stuff when I was a little precarious last night, turning on lights and stuff, but we were fine. And it was, being a touring musician, it was everything I could do to not trash that room last night. But flat screens are a lot harder to, they're not as much fun to destroy as the, remember the Who used to throw out televisions outside of off the balcony of their hotels? We didn't touch the room, John, it's good, safe, yeah. So we had a good time. And another thing that's happened in the last year are movies. I'm a big movie fan. Anybody else like cinema, movies? Big year for music movies. So Star is Born, right? 4th time it's been remade, maybe the best one yet. The Queen movie, I loved it, man. I lived Queen the first time. And interesting thing about Queen is nobody knew what to do with them the first time around. Now Freddie Mercury's almost normal. But back in the day, man, you saw Freddie Mercury on stage with these 3 relatively normal guys. Your head, you couldn't get around it. Forget about how great they sounded. Just the visual alone was something. A third music movie was the Green Book, which won Best Picture. And has anybody seen Green Book? I know it hasn't had wide release yet. Did you enjoy it? Yeah. Yeah, amazing. You play keyboards? No, but you don't have to play keyboards to like it. The premise of Green Book is essentially, it's a lot of things, but it's essentially the story of a touring musician who goes, and he's African-American, and he goes on the road in the Deep South. So you can hear there's already a lot of things going on in this premise. And his bodyguard is an old-school Italian guy from New York. And so there's a lot going on in the movie. Steven Spielberg called it the best buddy movie since Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I don't think they're marketing it right because a lot of people don't know what Green Book is. They don't know. Green Book is actually a document. It's a book that African Americans used to find safe hotels to stay in back in the day. I mean, it's hard for me to get my head around this, but they could only stay at certain places without getting hassled. And the Green Book is what it's called. It was invented by an African American, is the catalog of hotels that they could stay at. And in 2019, it's almost hard to imagine. The movie's fantastic. I highly recommend it. Has anybody been on the road as a touring musician? A lot of you, more than most companies. And you'll identify with that right away. Even though in the movie the musician is a classical pianist, you'll identify with the bad hotel rooms and the shaky promoters and and being treated less than sometimes, which is what we are as artists sometimes. So I really enjoyed it. And there's one other movie that came out last year. It's not a music movie, but I wanted to talk about this one in depth because it really dovetails nicely with our topic today, and that is the movie about Mr. Rogers. How many of you saw that? Hands up. What was the actual name of it? Was it Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood? Would you say it? Won't You Be My Neighbor? That's exactly right, because that was his verbal thing in the show. He said, would you be my neighbor? There was a song, I think, maybe about it. So Mr. Rogers, for those of you that don't know, was an old-time TV guy, and he was a friend, especially to children, but he was a friend to everybody. And he was a one-of-a-kind guy, very unique, very memorable, and some might say irreplaceable. There's never been anybody like him since he left PBS. I think he was on 30 or 40 years on PBS. An amazing personality, very original. Talk about a brand. Mr. Rogers. And some of you are too young to have ever seen him on, so just a show of hands, how many of you actually have seen Mr. Rogers on television in some capacity? Oh, cool, so you've probably seen him in reruns or something like this. He passed away, sadly, not long ago. But this movie, which kind of documents his life, talks about Fred Rogers and how he created this brand and because he's been studied now. Just like people are starting to study Sweetwater. He's been so successful, massively successful. And congratulations, by the way, on all the victories that you've had. I've been with you for a long time. It's been fun watching. I live in Detroit, by the way, and I keep tabs on you guys all the time. And so they research Fred Rogers, and they come up with 4 things about Fred Rogers that helped him develop this irreplaceable, memorable brand. Irreplaceable and memorable are valuable characteristics in a brand. Would we agree? I mean, this is like if you're going to shoot. I'm big on outcome. I teach presentation skills for a living. It's what I do. I do a lot of keynotes and travel and stuff like that. But my newest thing, and this is new since last time I saw you, is I developed an online coaching program called Present Like a Pro. And I tell the people that are onboarding into the class, I'm going to get you results. They don't even know what I'm saying when I say that. But I promise them that. I say, I'm going to get you results. And I'm so serious about it that we're not going to just aim at a target on the wall. We're going to aim at the bullseye of the target. You see? Everybody aims at the target. You'd have to be an idiot to see a target on the wall and not aim at it. But very few people aim at the bullseye of the target. Now, what are we talking about in practice? I used to use this guy's name all the time, and I've stopped using it because he got disgraced by the Major League Baseball. Roger Clemens, the great Yankee pitcher. Whatever you think of his politics and his temperament and his off-the-field and on-the-field behavior, he was a fantastic pitcher. And before people stopped interviewing him, he used to tell people when he played catch with the rookies, he'd say, play catch with purpose. And what he meant by that was, if you're going to bother to throw the ball to somebody, right, aim at the left seam of their jersey on the sleeve. Aim at the 3rd button on the jersey. Don't just throw it in the general direction of the guy that you're playing catch with. And of course, this makes sense if you're going to be a pitcher because you've got to hit outside corners, right? You've got to hit certain parts of that strike zone. And the reason that's important is because if it's a power hitter, the power hitter, if he's able to get his arms out, he can get that torque on the ball that he needs to put it into the bleachers. But if he has to keep his arms in, if you pitch him low and inside, he can't get his arms out. He's going to hit less home runs. That's how important it is when you're pitching, to hit the bullseye. But there's a bullseye in everything. I have a bullseye today in my talk. You have a bullseye in your job description, and it's measured. I know it is. And so to aim at that bullseye is a really good idea. So what people started to do after Fred Rogers died is they started to look at, well, what was this guy's bullseye? We're kind of, reverse engineering it because nobody figured it out before he did it. We only figure it out after he does it because now it's important. Now the guy's irreplaceable and memorable. Let's figure it out. And what they figured out is he has 4 things that you got to have if you're going to do what Fred Rogers did. And the 4 things are respect, empathy, passion, and optimism. And I'm going to break them down for you. So it's respect, empathy, passion, and optimism. I'll give you 4 examples of how Fred Rogers did it. And what we're going to do with everything we talk about today, guys and gals, is we're going to chase this outside example, Fred Rogers, to Sweetwater. Because we can. We can benefit from Fred Rogers. We can take the best of what he offered. Because you guys like all that stuff, right? Respect, empathy, optimism, right? You identify with those values. So let's see what we can learn from Fred. So with the respect, there was a little anecdote about all of these. So Fred Rogers attends the Daytime Emmys one time to win an award. And he goes to the podium, much smaller podium than that one. Really, any podium is smaller than that one. And he goes to the podium, and you know, if you've seen the Oscars or the Oscars were just on a couple nights ago, is that they have you on a timer. Even back then, they had you on a timer, and you only have a certain amount of time to talk. And what does Fred Rogers do in this prime time recognition of his show, where he has a chance to get more sponsorships for next year, thank his crew, thank his family, all the things that most people do in a thank you speech? What does Fred Rogers do in the valuable seconds that he has at the podium? He requests a moment of silence. He does the opposite of talking. And what do you think he wants the silence for? He wants everyone in the audience to take a moment to silently thank everyone that's helped them be successful. And he takes it out of his own clock. That's Fred Rogers. Who does this? Nobody. The second example is this idea of empathy. Fred is on tour all the time trying to raise money. It's public television, everybody, so he's got to find his own money. So he's courting a lot of sponsors, and he's getting to know all these people. And he goes on these junkets to not only meet the public, but do interviews and just be the face of, at first he was the face of his show, and then he became the face of public television. And at some point, he finds himself in a neighborhood, and some, rich benefactor lady family has a kid that's sick. And you can imagine, he doesn't maybe even know the details of the illness. He just knows that this kid is important to this lady, and so he's going to make time to go to the house and be with this kid just to say hi. He has no idea what he's going to see when he gets there. Will the kid even recognize him, remember him, whatever? And he gets there, and sure enough, the kid, who's got a lot of issues, it's in the research, telling you the name of what he has doesn't matter today, but he's got issues, the kid. Mentally, his eyes are spinning all the time. He's in a wheelchair. He's got a lot of stuff going on. And he gets there to meet his hero, Fred Rogers, who he does recognize. But what does the kid do when they wheel him into the room? He acts out. And they have to wheel him out of the room right away. Well, Fred, on a valuable tour here, he's taking time out of his thing, and now the kid's acting out. They remove the kid from the room. So Fred continues to sip his tea. And he waits a few minutes, and he says, I'll go see him if you don't mind. So Fred goes into the kid's bedroom. And I think he's escorted by one of the parents. And he sits on the bed, or wherever the kid is, and he's talking to the young man. The kid's like 7. And he says, and you just wonder, what's this irreplaceable, memorable personality going to do to turn this around? That's what I was thinking as I'm reading the story. And here's what he did. He just didn't start talking to the kid. He didn't ask him about his hobbies and this stuff. He asked the child for a favor. This kid who can't do anything for anybody. He can't even wipe his own butt because of all of his problems. He can't do anything for anybody, and Fred Rogers asks him for a favor. Are you with me? And nobody had ever asked the kid for anything before. And the kid's a human being, and he wants to help his hero. And he zoomed right in on Fred, and he says, in his own way, what can I do? Yes, what? And it doesn't even matter, of course, what Fred asked him to do, right? The connection now is made, like E.T., you know, and the magic, the Fred Rogers magic has been performed once again. Empathy. Empathy is feeling what the other person is feeling. It's not sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for the other person. Sympathy is a time waster. But empathy, ladies and gentlemen, is empowering. When another person knows that you get him, like Troy said a minute ago, you know, I'm a former musician. I get Sweetwater. I know you've had a lot of speakers. Not all of them have played. Not all of them understand music. So when you get somebody, they appreciate it. And sometimes we have to work at that, right? But it's worth it, man. It is worth it. So what are we looking at so far? Respect was the Emmy speech. Empathy was how he responded to the 7-year-old sick kid. The next one is passion. PBS is dependent on public funding, but they can also accept government funding, and they do every single year. The government funding is something that they can take to the bank on a regular basis because everybody likes public television. What they're hoping is to get that funding from the government increased every year, and that's not a sure bet. So what they used to do is send Fred Rogers to Washington. Mr. Rogers goes to Washington to appeal for the money because he's now, at this stage in his career, he's the face and voice of public television. So he goes in front of the subcommittee for communication, and he appeals to the chair of the subcommittee, which is Senator John Pastore, everybody. Tough guy. And there's a video of it on YouTube. And Pastore is, you know, he's kind of like flip guy. He's got the big celebrity in the chair now. You know, he's kind of moving around a little bit. I didn't like the guy in the video. And he says, well, Mr. Rogers, what have you got to say about public television? He's kind of flip, you know. And Mr. Rogers, from his chair, you know, we have all these theatrics now where performers, we've got the green screen, we've got all these, you ever listen to this national anthem anymore and there's a name for the vocal flips. It starts with an M, all these gymnastics that the singers do, you know. Oh, say can you see is like 50 notes, right? And back in the day, you know, that you could just stand and deliver. There's a fabulous video of a singer named Edie Gourmet. Some of older people in the room might remember Edie Gourmet. She was married to, you remember, Steve Lawrence. And she sings a version of What Did I Have That I don't have. Is that it? What did I have that I don't have? She stands stock still. She's 18 years old. Like, you know, like a young Rihanna, if you can imagine that. She stands stock still. There's one camera, and the only camera technique is she zooms in slowly, 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 because the song is like this slow build-up grind. And by the end, man, she is rocking it. No gymnastics, no, just stand and deliver. It's beautiful. And so Fred Rogers, from his chair, in front of the subcommittee for communication, in front of Congress, starts to speak to Senator John Pastore with no notes and the most amazing eye contact you have ever seen in a human being. You see it in the video. You can search it on YouTube. And he starts to talk about the importance of government funding for public television. And he's eloquent, and he takes his time. He's not standing, but he's delivering, right? And he finishes his little speech, and Senator John Pastore bangs the gavel, and he says, well, sir, I haven't been a fan of public television up until today, but you've sold me. You've got your $70 million. And he bangs the gavel. Now, some of that may have been theatrical purposes for the senator, but the video still plays. And the passion, the point is that the passion that Fred Rogers brought to a normally staid congressional hearing was impactful. Can you do that when you're talking over beers with people about Sweetwater or your clients or the stuff that you sell, the gear that you sell? Can you have that kind of passion? Can you bring it? Because if you can, you're on your way to becoming memorable, because nobody's that passionate about their job, and irreplaceable. And the fourth category for Mr. Rogers, first one was respect, second is empathy, third one is passion. The fourth one is optimism, this kind of undying sense that everything's going to work out, everything's going to be great. And a lot of us struggle with this day to day. I watched a little bit of CNN yesterday. You know what's going on in the news. I don't care what political party you're in, it's depressing. And you start to think, you get up in the morning and you stand up. You ever get in the car in the morning and it seems like your mirrors are off? Your rear view mirror seems like it's been adjusted, and you just got to bring it back. And same thing with your side view mirror sometimes. It's because you're sitting up straight in the morning. Your spine is not all compressed from standing up all day. And we get up in the morning, we stand up straight, man. It's a new day. The sun's coming out. It's a beautiful thing. And then as the day goes on, you start to get bad news. You start the deal that you thought was going to go through didn't go through. And, oh, my gosh, I wish my boss wouldn't have said that to me today, And you go home like this. And it's hard every day to have a good mood, to be in a good mood. And Fred Rogers' trick he got from his mother. His mother told him as he was growing up, and like most mothers, probably repeated the message over and over and over again. So it becomes part of, your brainstem when your mom and dad have something that they give you all the time, right? It's just rooted back there. And the thing that Fred Rogers' mom told him was, always look for the helpers. There's always helpers. And these are what I call safe people, S-A-F-E. Because there's two types of people in life, ladies and gentlemen. And I've learned this in the music business. I've learned it in the coaching business. There are safe people in the world, and there are unsafe people in the world. Let me give you an example from the music days. Back when my brothers and I toured the country on the college circuit, we ended up opening for acts like Rick Springfield, Corey Hart, Joan Jett. A lot of you don't remember these names anymore. But back in the day, they were big deal. And so we played a lot of places, and we met a lot of strange people. We met a lot of safe people. We met a lot of unsafe people. So I'll give you an example, a safe person. There was a guy in Mansfield, Ohio, and he hired us to play at his club called Night Moves. And he was impressed with our little band. We were just kids, and four brothers. So we were 5 years apart. And there's something about a brothers act, when they walk in, you can just tell they're all brothers. They're not the same age. One's older than one's younger. And it's just a lot of things start to come out in a family act. And he liked that a lot. And he gave us preferential, deferential treatment. And he had us back over and over to Mansfield, Ohio. It was a terrible drive. I remember it well. But he liked us. He took us under his wing, and he showed us some things about business and people and marketing. We needed it. He was safe. And then we played at a place in Willoughby Hills, Ohio, called the Sand Hill. And one night, I thought it was a pretty good night. I thought we had enough cash. We used to get paid with a guarantee plus the door. So if you had any kind of hang time in the marketing arena, if you had a name, you would rather be paid with the door than a flat fee, because your reputation's going to bring people in. You're going to prove to the bar owner that you're worth it, and you're going to risk flat fee, to take a portion of the door or all of the door. Well, that's the arrangement we had at this place. And one night, even after I thought there were quite a few people there, we're all loaded up and ready to go. It's normally the time that you get paid. It's always cash. And I would I went into many, many back rooms and offices where there was a revolver on the table, right? No gun on this particular night, but even more interesting, I can't get this guy's attention to get paid. And my brothers, my crew, they're waiting to go home. That's how long we've been waiting. You know how long it takes to pack up a band? A lot longer back then, by the way. We had a thing called cables. Wireless, man. And now I'm flashing back. We had analog tuners, no digital tuners back then. The lights, you could get a hernia just taking down the lights. They were so heavy. And we traveled with these big-ass 40, 50 cabinets. They were so heavy, man, so heavy. We did stairs with them. It was ridiculous. And today, the footprint on a PA is so small. And so They've packed away all the stuff, and I'm waiting for this guy, you know. And at first it feels like, you know, that minute hand on the clock, and then I feel like the calendar pages are coming off the wall because we got to get some sleep. We got to move on the next day, and he won't pay me. Finally, I dismissed the band. I said, "You guys go back, leave me a car, and I'll take care of this clown, and then I'll see you back at the hotel." So everybody leaves, and now he invites me to the bar to have a shot. It's like 3 o'clock in the morning. The place is all boarded up, closed. The help is still there at the bar. You know how the service industry is. And now he wants to drink. I don't want to drink. I want to go to sleep. So I have a shot with him just to be civil. And then he says to me, Michael, he says, "We got a little problem tonight. I'm by myself. I'm like 22 years old. All my mates are gone. And this guy, Tex, was his name, Tex. You can imagine what he looks like, big guy. And he says, Michael, he says, we got a problem." I said, well, I'm trying to think of the appropriate thing to say next. "Well, Tex, what's the problem?" And he goes, "We didn't do well with the door tonight." And I know what's coming next. He's going to either short us or not pay us. I mean, who knows how bad it's going to be. And he says, "Michael, tell me this. Will you guys, what can I do for you?" That's what he says. Now I'm tired. I'm getting buzzed. He goes, "What can I do for you?" I'm like, What can you do? He says, "Can I send some girls to the room?" And I wait, because I don't know what to say to that. I wait. He thinks I'm trying to up the ante. Like, that's not enough. So he says, "You guys need some blow?" And I don't know how to explain to this Flintstone that I cannot pay the hotel room with cocaine the next morning. Because that's what we needed the money for, because we didn't have any money back then. And I know he's got a revolver. I just haven't seen it. Tex was not a safe person. You understand the difference between safe and not safe? You understand the difference between a negative angel who sits on this shoulder and a positive angel that sits on this shoulder? And there are both in this room. And you have a chance and a choice of who to sit next to at lunch every single day. That's what I'm talking about. Optimism. And so you can cultivate for this for yourself, or you can let it die in the field, you know, like a farm, you know, when a dead crop. Optimism can be a dead crop for you. So this idea of being memorable and irreplaceable, I think Sweetwater's done a fantastic job becoming memorable and irreplaceable. There is no other company close to what you're doing. It will be almost impossible to recreate this scenario, especially in today's economics. And bravo to the brand Sweetwater. And my suggestion to you today is, because the brand is doing so well, the master brand, that you consider something I call a brand within a brand. Why not take advantage of the fact that you work at this fantastic organization and hitch your wagon to someone with a bigger wagon? Now, some of you are saying, well, Michael, I've already done that. I'm employed here. My paycheck is from Sweetwater. And, you know, good for you. I mean, that's the basic fundamental underpinning of your relationship. But you want a job or a career? Do you want to benefit from your relationship short term and then cash out? Or would you like to stay the course and really reap the benefits? Because short timers don't build the brand within the brand. They don't bother. And and let's be honest, everybody, some of us don't have the bandwidth to do this. Some of you may not even understand what I'm talking about when I say brand within a brand. And I'm taking questions all day today. I love the conversation. So you can interrupt me anytime, or we can talk at the end. But this idea of brand within a brand, and I'm going to give you many examples of it here in my remaining minutes, But I want you to think about this because it's a real opportunity for you. Do you know how many people do not work at successful companies? Do you know how many people work at average companies? Statistically speaking, most companies are average. I say that in this, it's funny, when I say that, and it's not too personal, everybody goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. But when I say it too directly, people don't like it. Sometimes I get a chance to address other speakers, right? People that do what I do, and I go, well, you know, statistically speaking, most speakers are average. And you're like, you can hear body noise that's coming from the audience, like, not me, you know, everybody in the room. You know the old saying that 82% of the population think that they're above average. So it's interesting how we think of ourselves. It's interesting how we don't think of ourselves. And we're giving you a chance today to think of yourselves differently and build this brand within a brand while extending the Sweetwater brand, of course. When I say brand within a brand, I don't want you to go rogue, right? You got to got to color within the Sweetwater lines. But then to establish something, think of it this way. Sweetwater's memorable and irreplaceable, and now you're at Sweetwater, and you're making yourself memorable and irreplaceable. And that may be hard for some of you to get there because you think, well, I work on a team of 100, and there's a lot of us, and I'm just a widget. But that's safe versus not safe thinking. That's optimism versus pessimism, right? So let's talk about some practical ways to do this. And by the way, this differentiation, you differentiating yourself is really, really important because you sell a commodity. You sell something that other people, that customers, can buy from other places, with rare exception. I know you've invented your own CRM. Nobody else can buy that. But almost anybody can buy a Stratocaster from someplace else for relatively the same price. So the differentiation does not come from the product. It comes from the service, and in particular, the relationship that's attached to the service. Because Amazon offers a service as well. You've heard of Amazon. Amazon offers a service as well. They also sell commodities. But Amazon is kicking it. Why? Because of the speed that they do it, because they're so good at what they do, because they make fewer mistakes than most people, because of Amazon Prime, clever marketing that they do, right? All this stuff. But Amazon has a major problem, everybody. Major problem. Anybody know what it is? Go ahead. These employees don't make money?
No, Amazon just started turning a profit maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah, they didn't make money for the longest time. That's correct. That was a big problem for a long time. I think they're probably working that out now.
Also automating everything and possibly eliminating.
Yeah, automating things. They have an image problem. As you know, they had this big contest to relocate, their or to establish a headquarters in New York, and New York said no, thank you. No, thank you. Hang on one second. They go, and they're like, Amazon's like, what? We just had this big contest, and we awarded you our presence, and you don't want us? That's a problem. Bezos's thing is a problem. You've heard about Bezos's thing. We don't need to get into that. Sir?
They don't have us.
They don't have you. Go ahead. Say more.
That's their problem.
Yeah. You're exactly right. Listen to me very carefully. If you remember nothing else about what I say today, remember this. Nobody has a friend that sells at Amazon. It's an extremely important thing for you to take with you today. Nobody has a pal that they can call at Amazon that can talk them through a sale or help them feel good about a purchase or share information with them in a very human way. They don't have it. But Sweetwater has it all day and all night, 365 days a year. You guys are amazing. And it's that relationship that has made, when I say relationship, plural, of course, that has made this master brand irreplaceable and memorable. Without it, you'd be just another company. You could be Amazon. Trick out your website, stop making phone calls, and you're Amazon. Which is why we train you to be really good at what you do. Elite. And I will say this honestly, John doesn't know anything I'm going to say today. He's on the edge of his seat. But he didn't know I was going to say this for sure. I've never worked at a company that's as highly trained as you guys. Never. When I say worked at, I mean spoken at. I've never really had a job now that I think about it. When I say worked at, I've never spoken at a company, and I've been all over the place, that's as highly trained as you guys. The culture here is amazing. I mean, I don't know if you really look. It can be hard to see the forest through the trees, to really appreciate where you're at as it's happening. And I'll tell you that as somebody who turns 60 in August. It's really easy to look at what's happening and not take it, and take it for granted. And I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying it's easy to do that. And then finally, when we talk about Amazon, comparing Amazon to Sweetwater, is that you work in a celebrity industry. What's fascinating to me about the music business, especially now that with the harvesting of The Voice and America's Got Talent and American Idol and all these shows, is that clearly, this is a celebrity industry. Even the non-talented people think they got it going on. Everybody thinks they're the bomb, or they're going to be the bomb. And that's fascinating to me. Charles Revlon, the guy, the makeup guy, they asked him one time they were interviewing him about selling and makeup and stuff like that. And at one point he just stops the interview and he says, "Look, I don't sell makeup," he says. "I sell hope." And that's what you guys sell. You sell celebrity, man. You sell hope. I mean, I think some of the people that you sell gear to can really play. I mean, they're masters. But a lot of them are just hoping to get there. And they want to use your tools and your expertise and any shortcut you can give them so that they can get to America's Got Talent and be on television. Certainly, you've had these conversations. Does this resonate with you that this is who we're selling to a lot of the time? It's okay, by the way. I'm just saying understand it. So we're in a celebrity business, and to me that requires celebrity service. For a long time, I've had this idea that customer service is really about helping people feel important. And I got this from my dad. You know how I said that Fred Rogers' mom used to say these certain things to him, like she said, look for the helpers, over and over and over again. My dad used to say to me when we were growing up, we were talking about celebrity service and this idea that everybody thinks they're a celebrity, everybody wants to be treated like a celebrity, right? My dad used to say that that you should treat everybody like it's like they're a star. And an extension of that was he said if you treat people really well, they'll remember you. Now you got that memorability thing clicking from earlier. My dad used to tell me over and over again, the worst thing in the world is that somebody would meet you and not remember. And so my dad worked really hard on first impressions because he didn't want you to forget him. You know, some of you would say, well, it was ego. But if you knew my dad, you would just know it was a game. And by the way, my dad was also a musician. Not a celebrity by any stretch. He got, closest my dad got, he got an invitation from Tommy Dorsey's brother to go to New York. Not exactly claim to fame, right? But I like this. I like thinking about that. So what's the difference between you treating people like celebrities and trying to be memorable versus just doing your job? What does that look like? How many of you are doing it now? Can everybody learn to do it? And then what's the benefit of it once we figure it out? So let's talk about this, everybody. So I'm going to bump into something now that's about psychology, right? Because I'm a big fan of psychology. I've been using it a long time, and I use it even in first impressions. I use it in what I call the first 15 seconds. When you meet somebody, the first 15 seconds tell the tale, right? 500,000 words in the English language. The average person speaks at 150 words a minute. You've got 15 seconds to impress me. What are you going to say? Think about it in the context of a phone call. Hi, this is Matt from Sweetwater Sound. What's next? And I know you have scripts and stuff and maybe talking points that you use, but how can we punch it up? How can we make it more memorable and less replaceable? So let's get into it. It turns out that there are 6 psychological triggers. And I see some people taking notes. That's cool. I can get this to you afterward if you want. So there are 6 psychological triggers, because it turns out people study this crap, and they figured out the 6 ways that you can get inside somebody's head, and by the way, never to take advantage of them. Never to take advantage of them. So I need you to take the Michael Angelo Caruso pledge. Would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? Come on. I, your name, promise never to use my powers for evil. Promise never to use my powers for evil. That's it. That's the pledge. Because I'm going to show you some stuff that helps you get inside people's head, but never to take advantage of them. That means never to sell them something that they can't use, won't use, can't afford, right? Ethics. Okay. So here are the 6 things, and we'll talk about all of them and break them down. The first one is reciprocity. The second one is commitment and consistency. The third one is something called liking. I'll explain. The fourth is something called authority. The fifth one is called social proof. And the 6th is scarcity. So let's break them down. The first one is called reciprocity. Does anybody know what reciprocity means? Anybody can put it into a few words?
To reciprocate, so if someone lets you borrow a pen, you can let them have a cookie from your lunchbox.
I feel like Michael Cohen in front of Congress. I can't see who's talking to me. Do you see the? No, that's okay. It's not your fault. Did you see the video though? Terrible situation to be in. Again, politics aside, he's getting grilled by this person, and then the next one starts, and the next one starts, and he can't even. It's like a shooting gallery. He can't even tell where it's coming from. Thank you, sir. Could you say it again a little bit louder? I think you're onto it.
Yeah, so if you need to borrow a pen from someone, you can reciprocate and give them something of yours when they're in need. So if they didn't have something for lunch, you can see that and reciprocate.
That's exactly right. So it's one hand. There's a lot of metaphors for this. One, I wash your back, you wash mine, which is very inappropriate now. We would never, ever do that with another person. It's politically incorrect to wash my back. Tide goes in, tide comes out, pendulum swings this way, pendulum swings this way. There's a lot of metaphors for this. Back in the day at the airport, because I travel a lot, I used to see Moonies at the airport. Remember Moonies? They're in the movie Airplane, if you remember the movie Airplane, where the gowns, and they would stand outside the airport, and their job was to collect money from you and ideally recruit you to their organization. It's a cult. And to do this, to get the conversation started, they would pick wildflowers from the side of the sidewalk, like dandelions, and they would walk next to you and hold out the flower, because they're going to give you a flower from the weed patch. What's the flower from the weed patch worth? Nothing. What do you give them? Whatever's in your pocket. You start looking for change. It's called the law of reciprocity, that if someone does something for you, you are feeling obligated to do something for them. It's almost as strong as gravitational pull, ladies and gentlemen. this idea of doing a favor for someone. And what's interesting to me about people, a lot of people have enemies. They don't know how to convert the enemies, because the last thing you want to do for an enemy is a favor. But you do something nice for somebody you don't like, you turn the relationship around. But most of us don't have the patience for that. We don't believe in it. But it's exactly how it works. It's called the law of reciprocity. So that's the first psychological trigger. I can get inside your head, total stranger, by doing something nice for you. Do you ever go inside a building with double doors, 2 sets of doors, and you open the door for the guy that's going to come through the first door? What does he do for you? He opens the second. Unless they're a jerk, and then they go in the first one by themselves, so they get in line ahead of you. But for the most part, people will do that. Okay, so the first one's reciprocity. Second one is this idea that we call commitment or consistency. And you guys do this very, very well at Sweetwater. Of the 6 psychological triggers, I think you're the best at this one because you measure it. Commitment and consistency. We come to work every day. We got a routine that we do. We're going to measure the routine. We're going to give you feedback on it. We're going to give you reinforcement. Well done. The third one is called liking. You actually have to like the person for the psychological trigger to be attractive. I call this being psychologically attractive, right? If I'm psychologically attractive, you move closer to me psychically because you like something about me. My style, my humor, my tone. We do this with speakers all the time, musicians, music. Like, I'm not a Lady Gaga fan, but I like the movie, right? So I'm watching the movie, and I've got this thing called cognitive dissonance. Hate Gaga, like the movie. And this is how psychology works, right? And eventually, by the end of the movie, guess what? I like Gaga better than I used to. This is how it worked. So liking is important. Number 4 is authority, but not the kind of authority you're thinking of. Not, the whip authority. Authority is like, I know what I'm talking about. And because I know what I'm talking about, or because I seem like I'm smarter than you, you gravitate toward me. You find me psychologically attractive, if that's true. By the way, I know I'm not for everybody, but I am for a lot of people. And you are in Sweetwater's just perfect for a lot of people. So I'm going to give you a quick technique to establish authority and have people move psychologically closer to you. You're going to laugh when I tell you the trick. It absolutely works. Ready? Here's the trick. When you're on the phone with people and you want them to know that you're smart, right? Do you want to be educated about your gear and stuff? You want to be on top of it? They ask you about specs. You got the answer. How many pride yourselves in this? Raise your hand if you do. Raise your hand if you don't. Everybody wants to be smart. The idea is to impress this guy or gal so that they buy something from you. You've got product knowledge. You've got service knowledge. And so if you want somebody to think that you're smart, use a word they don't know. One word. I don't know how long your average call is, 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But slip in a word that they don't know. And they will automatically think that you're smarter than they are. And everybody wants to do business with people who are smarter than they are. Want some words? Erudite means smart. Loquacious, talkative. Like I said, 500,000 words to choose from. Now don't get prickly about this, right? There's $1 million words, $1,000 words, $100 words, right? You just need to be one notch higher than how most people talk. And they go, this guy's got it together. This guy's got a better vocabulary than I have. They make that jump. Because you've got a better vocabulary, you must know more about gear. It makes no sense at all, but psychology doesn't make sense a lot of the time. It just works. So try it. What do you got to lose? By the way, I'm old enough to remember a bunch of phrases that we don't use anymore. Words like, let's see if you remember them. I'll start them, you finish them. Hey, we could kill 2 birds. What? We're going to kill birds with rocks? It's like a saying that, like the younger kids don't say this stuff anymore. How about this one? There's more than one way to... You're going to skin a cat? What's that look like? So the other day, I have fun with these phrases because a lot of kids don't know them. And I'm in Rotary, right? And so we do a lot of work for youth. And I was just jazzing with a kid. And I said to him, because the phrase is, you look like $1 million. You know the phrase? You look like $1 million. And I said to the kid, he's like 16, you look like $100. And he goes, thanks. I didn't say anything. I didn't even tell him, you know? It's all right. The first one's reciprocity. Second one's commitment and consistency. The third psychological trigger is liking. The fourth one is authority. You're a little smarter than them. And that's good news for them. Number 5 is something called social proof. The term was coined by a guy named Robert Cialdini in a fantastic book called Influence. Do not read the book Influence. It's boring. It's old. It's stiff. Read his newer book, and the spelling is Cialdini, Cialdini, and the newer book is called, anybody? I'm blanking on it right now. But Robert Cialdini is the book. Read his newest book, and it's an updated version of Influence. If you just look up Influence on Amazon, the other book will come up. And the 6th one is scarcity, which you guys also use, right? Lots of companies use. I don't know how you do it, but how do you do it? How do you sell something if you're almost out of a product? What do you call it? What? Limited?
Fear of loss.
Fear of loss. We're going to get to that. Fear of loss is a cognitive bias is what it's called. And that's exactly that's the psychological trigger, absolutely right. But we don't say to the customer, hey, I'm going to leverage fear of loss and see if I can get you to buy this thing. We tell them it's a limited offer, or it's a, what do you call it? Out of stock? Do you have a name for that? Do you do it?
While supplies last.
Say it?
While supplies last.
While supplies last, something like this. You've heard it in different other contexts. Does Sweetwater use that language somehow? Do you say it like that?
Limited run.
Limited run, okay, same thing. You know, when they make guitars and they only make 10 of them or 100 of them, they have a name for that too. What do you say? Unobtainium, thank you. So, scarcity. This is your last chance to do this. I can't do it forever, right? And it's a fantastic psychological trigger. People say, because the fear of loss, or what's called loss aversion, plays on their mind. Oh my gosh, this is my last chance. I better jump. And again, you never do this to take advantage of anybody, but some people, it's them that do it. They're the one that don't want to lose out. All you did was mention that it's a limited run. But you mention it to the right person, sale. Now, I had the great pleasure of interviewing a kid named Brandon Voss. And the reason I interviewed Brandon Voss on my podcast is because his old man, Chris Voss, wouldn't do the podcast with me. Chris Voss authored a book. It's one of the hottest business books of the year, and it's called Never Split the Difference. And it's really hard to get an interview with Chris Voss. So Chris sent me his son, Brandon, and which is fine. Brandon was a great interview. But Chris Voss is a former FBI hostage negotiator. And when the hostage negotiator, just like in the movies, goes in to talk to the guy, he's using psychological triggers to save lives. So this stuff actually works. My point is, some people are using them to save lives. Can you use it to sell some more guitars? The answer is absolutely yes, if you care to. And I'm going to tell you which one of these work best for you, I think. So they're called cognitive biases. Cognitive biases. They come from a guy named Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. This stuff was so earth-shattering and mind-blowing when it came out a few years back that Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for discovering, if you will, or articulating cognitive biases. You can Google it up, cognitive biases. There's over 100 of them. I'm just going to share a few with you today in my remaining time. Then we'll do some Q&A, okay? So the first one I want to share with you is called confirmation bias. Confirmation bias simply says that you're selling to somebody who already thinks that a certain brand is the best. Gibson's the best. Gibson guitars are the best. So even if Gibson's not the best, even if Gibson goes out of business, that would never happen. Even if Gibson goes out of business, that you can't talk him out of a Gibson. Confirmation bias. All roads for him lead to Gibson. You cannot change his mind. So here's the question. Can you recognize that early enough to stop wasting time on selling him something else? Can you recognize confirmation bias in him or her and save a lot of time and save the sale? Next one is called optimism bias. Optimism bias. Now I'm going to ping pong back and forth between selling strategies and your attitude and this idea of you building a brand. Optimism bias. Optimism bias says, you know what? I trust my company. I trust my boss. I like what's happening at Sweetwater. It doesn't say you like everything about it, but I'm hitching my wagon to this bigger wagon, and I believe in what's happening here. Optimism bias. But you become so optimistic that all you have to do is show up for work, and then you realize that you're overly optimistic. You actually had to do something. You had to volunteer for stuff. You had to stay extra on occasion. You had to work on Saturday mornings once in a while, whatever the thing is. So you get overly optimistic with optimism bias. And of course, there's something called pessimism bias, which is the opposite. Pessimism bias is, I work at a big machine, Sweetwater's not like it used to be, my boss doesn't really care about me. You actually convince yourself that all this stuff is true, and it's not. And you got inside your own head, and you ruin your own game is what happens. The next one is called blindside bias. This is my favorite because I'm a consultant. When I come into companies to help, the people that hire me are paying me to tell them the truth about what I observe at their company. You with me so far? It's not complicated, but it's going to get ugly in a second. So I say I need a month to study and interview and do some research, and then I'm going to tell you what I see, and then we can make plans to go forward from there. Is that okay with you, sir? Or man? And the guy says, yeah, right? So a month later, we sit down. I've got 100 hours or whatever invested in my work. I've interviewed hours and hours of people. I've got all this data, all this research and all this stuff. And I say to the guy, okay, here's what I think is your biggest problem. But he doesn't recognize it as a problem. This is called blindside bias. Now, it doesn't mean I'm always right, but I did do a month's worth of work, and this is what I think is happening. So here's what happens in the consulting business. The owner of the company says, I don't see it, you're fired. Blindside bias. You're the last to know the problem. Everybody else sees it but you. And everybody is vulnerable to this. Everybody. That's why it's such a powerful pull. Cognitive bias. Attentional bias says, and you like this one, that the more that somebody hears from you about something, the more likely they are to pay attention to it. So this is you making your regular calls, not leaving customers or prospects unattended. By the way, is Delvin in the room? I want to thank you for looking after my brother Dave for the last 10 years. Did you know we were brothers? And this guy apparently has been there for Dave day and night and I don't think Dave's a champion purchaser with you, but Dave does not make friends easily. And he doesn't trust easily. And I'll tell you about that story some other time. It has to do with my mother, actually. So I know it because I have similar issues. And you've been looking after my brother Dave, and I really, really appreciate it. You are there for him year in and year out, and thank you very much. And you're practicing this thing called attentional bias with Dave. And even when you call him and he doesn't return your calls, right? He's hearing your name on the voicemail, or he sees that you called. And that's cool, because he pays more attention to you. And we call this a touch in the sales trade, a touch. And a touch can be a text, voicemail, email, conversation, personal visit, video. My new favorite is audio texts. Has anybody sent audio text to clients or prospects? Oh, it's the best because now it's your voice. Email and texting let us down because there's no tone, humor, right? All those things are lost. And when you so there's a thing on most phones now. If you got a newer phone, you press the microphone in the text and you send an audible text to the person. It's very unique. It's memorable, right? It's replaceable. You can delete it, but it's memorable. Okay. There are others, and I'm going to leave time for Q&A. There are others. The bandwagon effect, which is everybody wants the same thing at the same time. This is very, if you're in a fashion industry or I suppose a new piece of gear comes out, you see a run on something, it's called the bandwagon effect. The decoy effect, you'll like this one. A lot of you can't use it, but upper management set prices and stuff, I guess you can use it in phone calls. Decoy pricing looks like this. I'm selling something to you that has say two price points, $5 and $10. You with me? You say, well, it's not much of a differential, but it's the second one, the highest price, is twice as much as the lowest price. 2x, $5 and $10. If I say to you, you could buy the $5 one or the $10 one, what goes through your mind psychologically? That the $10 one will be better. Excellent. What else? I heard something. What's wrong with the $5 one? That's good. Excellent. What else? What does the $10 one have that the $5 one doesn't have? What else? Can I get the $10 one for $5? Excellent. There's probably 5 or 6 more.
Why would I buy the $10 one when I can buy two $5 ones?
Good. Why would I get the $10 one if I could get two $5 ones? Or even better, why would I get the $10 one if I could get the $5 one? How about this? I never buy the most expensive one. I'll take the $5 one. You with me? Now here's how decoy pricing works. Now I'm going to offer you 3 prices, same product, different versions of the product. I have a $5 option, a $10 option, or a $15 option. How does the $15 option compare to the $5 option? 3x. You with me? Now what goes through the psychology when you look at 5, 10, and 15? What changes? Think about the last one I said, I never buy the most expensive one. I never buy the cheapest one. I'll take the $10 one. And now your price, your mark, your revenue stream just went 2x. That's called decoy pricing. You might do it now, I don't know. Never take advantage of anybody. Empathy gap, authority bias. There's authority again. The better than average effect. We're getting callbacks now to some of the things I've talked about earlier, right? And my favorite 2 psychological triggers are psychological biases. Oh, I'll save them for you. I have a couple more. Primacy, recency. So you're on the call for 20 minutes. Primacy, recency. Anybody know what this is? What? Yes, but which one do they remember the most? The first thing or the last thing? And this is all things being equal. If you really botch the introduction, all bets are off. But if the call's like a level playing field, nothing really strange about the call. Think about the middle of the call, the beginning of the call, the middle, or the end. What do people tend to remember most according to the primacy, recency, cognitive bias? The first thing, the opening. What's the second thing they remember? The end. And the third thing, the least memorable, the middle. Now, knowing this, you're going to have a strong opening. Journalists have known this for years. That's why they put the very first thing in the article tells you everything you need to know about what's happening. If that's not there, it's called burying the lead in journalism. And it's an indictable offense in J school. So you open really, really strong, right? And then you plumb the depths from there. And always end with end with the call to action. And they're going to forget what's in the middle. They're going to forget all the numbers and stuff in the middle. Okay, very good. And then my favorite cognitive biases are FOMO, fear of missing out, and YOLO. You only live once. You probably knew those, didn't you? Let's do some Q&A, man. Also, before we wrap up, I wanted to talk quickly about story selling because this idea of being able to tell a good story makes you more memorable as a salesperson. Very few salespeople actually figure this out, but the ability to tell a story in a quick phone call is amazing, right? Now, let's define our terms. A story is different than an anecdote. An anecdote is over in 3 sentences. That's not a story. A story has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it takes you someplace. Story has 3 characteristics: brief, unique, and a positive moral. And it turns out, again, people study this crap, there are 7 types of stories. Think about how we talked about movies at the very beginning. All movie plots are described in 7 ways. That's all there are, 7. And I'm going to give them to you right now because I want you to get better at telling stories. We can visit about this again sometime if you want. The idea of being able to tell a good story is a differentiator. It makes you memorable and irreplaceable because nobody can tell your stories. You understand? Talk about a brand within a brand. Nobody can tell the story the way you tell it. So here are the 7 types of stories. Then we'll do some Q&A. First one is conquering the monster. Think about the Marvel movies, the Superman, slaying the dragon, Lord of the Rings, all these, conquering the monster. That's the first story. Now, the way we do this in sales is you would talk about a guy who overcome life odds to become a really good piano player or to support his family playing music. You could think of a lot of different ways that you could tell this story about one of your clients, for example. Second example is easy. Rags to riches. Somebody's born poor, figures out music, is a patron of Sweetwater, and now they're kicking it. Probably have clients, famous clients. I know you do. And they came from nothing. Figure that out, and then tell their story, right? Because people love these stories. They're inspirational, and they're memorable. Number 3, the quest. I'm going to go on a journey. Joseph Campbell called it the hero's journey, right? The hero's journey means for big things to happen to you, you have to go on a road trip. Think Thelma and Louise, right? So this is the band that goes on the road and comes back, this kind of a thing. The journey or quest. The 4th is the voyage and return. Think about the prodigal son. Lots of stories about people that they go on the road and make a lot of friends, and then they come back and then they set up a nightclub in their own hometown. That's a voyage and return. And now they're teaching, right? They went on the road and now they're back home and they're teaching, right? Voyage and return. Number 5 is easy, comedy. Number 6 is tragedy, the opposite of comedy. And number 7 is rebirth. I used to play 10 years ago. I haven't played for 10 years, and now I'm going to get back in it again, rebirth. And when you can frame your customers' success stories in one of those 7 stories, they feel like you're encapsulating their life. They feel like you get them, right? And a bunch of nice flywheels start to spin. It's pretty cool. You guys are amazing. I appreciate you listening and sponging, and I hope it's been helpful. We have, again, as always, created video of the session today so that you can watch it again or share it or just review something. And I'm happy to take some questions about anything you'd like to ask me, business or personal. Let's start down here. Sir, Luke.
Yes. So I'm going to take a cue from your speech today. So like when you asked to do the pledge, okay?
Yeah.
So personally, I looked around and I think that there was hesitance among the crowd.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like I was the only one. And so my question is, like that barrier to participation, to kind of like get involved with what the group is doing, to buy in. Any insights on like what inhibits us from doing that and rather like seeing it in a noble way?
Sure.
An empowering way?
Luke is asking, we'll repeat for the production crew and the people in the back. Luke is asking, when I asked for the pledge, there was a little bit of hesitation. What am I getting into here? And can I ask why you're asking? You see this in sales?
I think it's buying into like the team mentality.
Okay.
Like wanting to be your lone ranger rather than seeing the strength of like the
Yeah, sure. So his interest is how does that affect team dynamics when, say, the manager asks everybody to do something, but everybody, well, the joke is, and we've seen this Three Stooges do this back in the day, the guy go, hands up, and everybody puts their hands in their pockets, like, can I have a volunteer? Nope, and it's embarrassing for the team, and it's hard to keep morale and momentum when you're not getting that follow through. So a couple things. One is, I've done that little bit. It's called, I work like a comedian in bits, Luke, and I've done that bit all over the place, and it never fails. So I know if I just hang in there, it'll happen. You felt it today, the hesitation. I didn't even notice, because I know it's coming. So there's an advantage there of working a formula. But the second thing may be even more important. There is a bias called the bystander effect. And I learned about it recently when I took a first aid class, a CPR class, because it works like this. Somebody drops on the sidewalk outside a restaurant, or let's say inside a restaurant, and for what seems like a long period of time, this person just lays on the floor unaided. And why? Somebody else will help them. I'm not even a medical person, and there's got to be, for God's sake, there's 50 people in here. One of you's got to be a nurse, and I just, nurse, doctor, anybody? And it may not even be that long, but I'll delay my participation because nobody else is jumping in. And as soon as the nurse moves, then I'll move. I'll be second. In the speaking business, we say nobody ever wants to ask the first question. By the way, thank you for being the first question. But I'll say, what kind of questions do you have? And I get crickets. In the radio, they call that dead air, and you get fired for it. So what I do when I'm asking Q&A, I know there's going to be dead air when I say, who wants to be first question? And so I have a ringer question in my back pocket. And I'll say, one of the questions I say, who wants to ask the first question? Quick, 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 quick. Right? Is that a cricket? And then I'll go, by the way, at this point in the program, almost everybody wants to know what instrument I played. And the instrument was bass. Now I've asked the first question, and you can ask the second question. And you feel better about asking the second question. Pretty cool. Does that help? Be patient. If it's a good offer, people will figure it out. Having said that, I think there are always ways to craft that invitation that make it seem easier to comply with. In my case, I didn't say, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I said, raise your right hand and repeat after me. You see the difference? Modeling. On the phone, you can ask what are called yes questions. We don't do this when we're on the phone because the head can't get around it. If I'm with you in person and I'm trying to get you to convince you to do something that, by the way, is in your best interest, I'll say, would you like to go to lunch with me today? Like this. I might not do it like this, really obvious. Would you like to go to lunch with me today? Like that. You see people do this. And it turns out that little Bob is hypnotizing. Right? Watch the difference. Would you like to go to lunch with me today? Hey, would you like to go to lunch with me today? You see? It's called the yes question in the sales trade. You probably knew this. But what we don't do is on the telephone, nod our head yes. Why not? Because, you idiot, they can't see you on the phone. Why would you ever nod your head yes? And yet it works. Just like smiling on the phone works. I'm sure you know about smile training. Other questions? Sir?
You never really elaborated much on the social proof.
Oh, thank you. Did I miss other things too? Number 4, 5. You're right, I skipped over it. Social proof. Okay, so social proof comes from what are called third-party testimonials. This is, by the way, number 5 of the 6 psychological triggers, social proof. And also comes from Robert Cialdini in the book Influence. And the concept is that if I tell you how great I am, it's advertising. But if John tells you how great I am, or Troy, it's the truth. You hear it? So here you are trying to sell gear, Sweetwater gear, to somebody, and you're telling everybody how great the Sweetwater gear is. You understand the problem? You're the salesperson. But what happens when somebody who's not selling for Sweetwater says, yep, this is the bomb? And you could play with this. It's not just that, yep, this guitar is the bomb. Yep, Luke is the bomb. I think you should have reviews for the salespeople, not just for the products. There's an idea for you. Go to work on that one, somebody. You review your salesperson. Do you do that? How do they do it? How does a customer do that? Huh? Comment card? Which is what, a physical thing? It's online. And what's the participation level? Pretty good? Okay, good. Oh, excellent. You guys don't miss anything. That's one of the hardest things about speaking here is you're so good. I keep thinking, yeah, they don't know that. Oh, there it is. Bravo. Any other last questions, comments? Again, Michael Cohen. Who wants to hit me next? Thank you, sir. First name. Hey, man.
So this is very easy for me. If that makes sense.
Okay.
This is very easy, sort of doing things for other people and talking to other people. And you were talking about how you should treat everybody like a star. So that kind of resonated with me, and I kind of visualized that. So like again, I'm gesturing with my arms.
That's good.
This is easy.
Yeah.
This is not.
Yeah. It's even worse than that on the phone. It's this to this, right?
So with that in mind, you sort of said to sort of, treat everybody with respect and sort of do that. But in respect to that, how do we treat ourselves so that we're more effective when speaking with others?
In the one-on-one.
In any context, yeah.
Something less than this.
Yes.
Okay. So for the those of you that didn't hear, the question is, a lot of us are performers. I sense you're a performer of some sort. Yeah, it's all over you, man. Plus, I don't know what it is. Is it music? Theater? Both, yeah. I don't know what it is about musicians, but like we're kindred spirits. I meet a total stranger and I know right away he plays an instrument. A lot of times I know what instrument it is. It's creepy, but it just works for me, and maybe you feel the same way. So this gentleman says, I'm really good with crowds and performing and stuff, but he says maybe it's a little harder to figure that out on a telephone or in a one-on-one or something less than, being on stage. And here's the trick, man. All you do is dig a little bit deeper than the average person digs. Like, for example, let me see. Trying to think of a good example. All right, so the gentleman here, what is your first name, sir? The sweater. Yeah? Spencer. Nice to meet you, sir. Michael. So Spencer's got a pretty contemporary haircut, right? And you're going to take some heat for this, man, later on. I'm sorry. But he's got a pretty good haircut. Seems like a stylish guy. I haven't even seen the bottom half of him. I'm just seeing what, the top half. He looks like a pretty stylish guy. And so I might say, hey, I like your, and musicians, we got our own language. I might say, nice lid, right? And he knows right away, I'm talking about his hair. And he goes, thank you very much. Now, he likes this because he has a comb at home that he uses every day. And I know he has a comb because there's a part in his hair, right? He takes the time to do this. So this is important to him. I haven't used a comb in 40 years, everybody. Some of you are saying, I know, Michael. But he uses it. Is it a comb? Yeah, of course. It's the only way to get the part. And so my point is that, so he's proud of his hair, and I know he likes it, and he's telling me that with his nonverbals. Now, I can't do this on the telephone with him at this point. Although, if I can Facebook him, I can figure it out that way. I'll then ask him something else about his hair if it's a point of pride. Now, this is all very subjective and gut, instinct. I don't want to embarrass him. But I might say, tell me something, Spencer. I've been looking for some new hair product. What do you use? And I watch his eyes. See that? I knew he had product in his hair. And because he takes pride in this, and he wants to, and nobody else comments on it. When's the last time somebody asked you about what kind of product you use in your hair? Never. Memorable. That's me. Memorable. Mission accomplished. You see what I just did? But it's harder on the phone because you don't have the nonverbals. So you have to work harder. Facebook, LinkedIn, all these sites can be very useful to you. I know we got to get you out of here. Have you enjoyed the session?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Are you going to give me a round of applause?
So, unlike you, this is really, really, really hard and grossly uncomfortable for me. Okay? And this, last night at dinner, is like really, really, really comfortable. And this is really, really comfortable for me. So everyone's different. And I think everybody can pick up something out of Michael's talk this morning, you know, a nugget here or a whole boulder, whatever. One of the I wanted to just to tag on a couple of things. Even on the phone, from 100 years ago, you want to be memorable, right? You want to be memorable at the beginning? So Kenny Burgle says his name is what? Kenny Burgle. Everybody knows that. He used the first 3 words of a conversation to become incredibly memorable, and everyone knows that his name is Kenny Burgle. Lastly, my wife, many of you know from my class or whatever, my wife has been a worship leader at church and has been in charge of, you know, getting people in, and kind of what she would tell people, what she does for folks that don't know about the church thing is like you've got the speaking and you've got everything else, and she's in charge of the everything else. She would coach people on every person that came and stood on a platform to ask for money, right? Like the mission house, the crisis pregnancy center, the whatever. And she would coach them all. Like they can come in, they can show a big slide, and they can show like, you know, statistics. And we had 200 that we saved, or 200 that we helped to like fix their leg, or 200 that we did whatever. And next year we want to do 250. You get no money at all. Many of you know this. You show a picture of a person, you tell the story. She would tell them every time, tell a story. Tell a story about that young mother. Tell a story about the kid that, you know, tell a story about the homeless family that turned around and the dad got a job and so on and so forth. And if you just tell 1 or 2 stories, don't show any statistics, the money pours in. Exactly what Michael was talking about. Like, you know, figure out a way to tell a story, your own story. I tell my wife's story because I'm not a musician, so I tell her story. But tell those stories. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful. Tell stories about your other customers. Use their name or don't use their name. But really, really great stuff. So thanks a lot to Michael for coming out, and let's get on the phones in 2 minutes.